I pressed play on the wedding slideshow and watched my brother's smile dissolve into a confession he didn't know he'd recorded. The room went silent. Then the screaming started. Hey, I'm Mark, 28, out of Austin, Texas. If stories about betrayal turning into cold surgical justice hit you in the chest, tap like and subscribe. I tell true, messy revenge stories, so you never have to live them. All right, let's begin. The first thing you need to know about my family is that Tim, my brother, was born with a spotlight on him. Mom says he emerged into this world with a dimple, hair already swooped like a junior senator, and an expression that read, "I've got it from here." He did. Teachers loved him, neighbors trusted him with spare keys, and my parents hung every one of his participation ribbons like Olympic medals. If Tim failed a test, it was because the teacher was unfair. If I got an A, it was because the test was easy. We were 2 years and 9 months apart, which meant he could talk me into things and still blame me when they went sideways. That's what big brothers do, he'd grin. But he wasn't the big brother. He just played one on TV, the TV that existed inside our parents' heads. I learned early to be the observer, the fixer, the one quietly keeping things stitched together. Maybe that's why, when I saw the first hint, I didn't trust it. I assumed I was misunderstanding. My best friend Carla and I met sophomore year of high school during debate practice. She could disassemble an argument like it was a mechanical watch. Smooth, patient, precise. She knew my favorite cheap diner in the city, and what I ordered when I was stressed. Grilled cheese, extra pickles, fries well done. She'd text me, "Stop scrolling and sleep," like she had a camera in my room. People assumed we'd date, but there was always some invisible line for us. We called it the hinge. We attached, we supported, we swung open for each other when life needed a door, but we never walked through. I trusted her like I trusted gravity. When Tim got engaged to Emily, everything went soft focus for our family. Emily wasn't just kind and beautiful. She was the kind of person who remembers your barista's name and your dog's birthday. The first time she came over, she slipped off her heels at the door, laughed at Dad's terrible wordplay, and helped Mom wash dishes without being asked. I saw how Tim looked at her that night, bewitched. I remember thinking, maybe he's finally done being the favorite and ready to be the partner. The wedding planning took on a life of its own. Group chats, spreadsheet tabs, tiny glass bottles with dried wildflowers. I was the unofficial logistics guy, of course. Maps for the out-of-towners, hotel blocks, the playlist for the rehearsal dinner. Tim slapped my shoulder and told me I was saving him. It felt good, sure. It felt like being included, necessary, safe. And then, on a Tuesday night that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink, I found the first thread. I was at Tim's apartment helping him assemble welcome bags. He'd accidentally left the errand to the last minute. Classic. And I'd stepped in. He ran down to move his car. The building had towing signs like moral warnings. His laptop pinged. Sometimes I think the laptop wanted to be caught. Or maybe I needed to be broken open to see what had been under my nose. A small gray notification bloomed. Carla. The preview line. "Next time, don't leave your..." The rest vanished. I had no right. I had every right. I tell myself my hand didn't shake when I tapped the touchpad and the screen woke. Tim's MacBook smiled, his photo bright and easy. Messages was open like a door pushed, not quite closed. The thread with Carla scrolled up like a rolling hillside of flirtation. Nothing explicit yet. Winks, private jokes, a photo of a takeout container that wasn't Emily's favorite place. A comment about the thrill. It was the timing that killed me. A sequence of messages from 2 nights before. During the time Emily and Tim were at a cake tasting, there was a photo I didn't want to see. A mirror, 2 shapes, a caption from Carla. "You're late, again." I keep saying the good stuff can't wait. You know that feeling when your stomach drops in an elevator? This was like the elevator cable snapped. I was free-falling in silence, watching numbers blur past. I scrolled up. Weeks. Months. There it was in ugly, undeniable pixels. Hotel receipts. Time-stamped snaps of a necklace I'd seen on Carla. "Does it look good? You were right about silver." Jokes about Emily's meticulous binder. Then a video. I didn't open it. I could hear it already, even in the quiet of my head. The sound of apologies I was never meant to hear. The front door rattled. I slammed the laptop shut so fast the charger jumped. Tim walked in, whistling an unearned victory song. "Dude, the tow truck driver knows me now. He said I have a friendly face." He grinned. I stared at him. He filled the doorway like a billboard. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired. That night my ceiling sprouted teeth." I lay there with my phone clenched in my palm until my fingers numbed. Sleep wasn't sleep anymore. It was an endurance event. Hot, shallow, lit by 1,000 what-ifs. I didn't tell Carla. I didn't tell Emily. Not yet. I waited for the rational part of my brain to wrestle down the part that was screaming. Betrayal. 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 I gave myself 48 hours to do nothing but breathe and watch for a sign that I'd misread everything. The sign didn't come. Instead, I got a second notification. This time, it was from a shared drive we used for wedding logistics. Tim had accidentally dropped the wrong file into the rehearsal dinner folder. Or maybe he meant to put it in receipts. Or maybe he just doesn't know how to label anything in his life except other people. The file was named simply 11 p.m. I opened it. It was a screen recording of a FaceTime, cropped with care, muffled by smirking laughter. Carla's voice hushed and breathless. "You're impossible." Tim's, calling her trouble. There was a bed, a wall I recognized from her apartment, green-gray paint and a bruise of chipped plaster by the window where she'd once hung a shelf. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, just sound and shape and proof. I closed the laptop and washed my hands, like guilt was something that could be rinsed off. When I finally looked up at my reflection, my face looked like it had been rearranged. My eyes were too close together, or maybe too far apart. I looked like a person who had a job to do and had just realized it. I called Tim. He didn't pick up. I called Carla. She picked up on the second ring like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey," she chirped. "Surviving the wedding avalanche?" "I found the video," I said. Silence tumbled between us. "Then careful, what video?" "Don't," she exhaled. "Mark, how long?" She talked for 6 minutes. She said it was complicated. She said it started by accident. She said she loved Emily in a sister way, and Tim in another way, and me like a hinge, a word that felt like a joke now, a trick. "You lied to me," I said. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you." "You lost me," I said. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice sounded like a locked room. "I'm ending it," she promised. "I swear." "We'll end it." "You'll end it," I repeated. "Before or after the vows?" "Before," she said. "Tonight." I could have told Emily right then. Maybe I should have. But something small and stubborn inside me didn't trust Carla's sudden morality play. Something bigger knew Tim would bury it, polish it, turn it into a misunderstanding. I could see the way it would go. He'd cry. Mom would cry. Carla would apologize in 1,000 tender words. Emily would be told she was overreacting. And in 6 months, there'd be a baby announcement and a Christmas card with matching pajamas. I needed something undeniable. I needed something that couldn't be softened by charm. I called Tim again. He picked up this time, voice bright with the performance he wore like cologne. "Yo, big day, huh? What's up?" "I know," I said. He didn't even pretend not to understand. That told me more than any video could. "Mark," he sighed, "this isn't your business." "She's marrying you," I said. "It's my business." He laughed, a small ugly sound. "Take it easy, it's complicated. Do you love her?" "I love a lot of people," he said like it was poetry. "Emily?" I said, my voice very soft. He was quiet long enough for the line to throb in my ear. "Yes," he said finally, "in my way. That's not the way she thinks she's getting." "Look," he said, voice dropping into the register he used to get our dad to buy him a car he couldn't afford. "We're 2 days out. If you blow this up, you'll hurt Emily more than you'll hurt me. She'll be humiliated. Think about her. Think about Mom." "I am," I said. "I am thinking about her." He said he'd end it. Same script as Carla. Break it off. Make a clean start with Emily. Be a better man. He was always on the edge of being a better man, like a runner at the starting line who never quite hears the gun. "Don't do anything dramatic," he added. "You've always been a little theatrical, bro. It's funny what your body remembers for you." That word, theatrical, took me back to 8th grade. When he told our grandma I'd broken her ceramic lamp, then hugged me in front of everyone and whispered, "It's just a story. You'll be fine," while I got grounded for 2 weeks. When I hung up, I knew what I had to do. Not a confrontation, not a warning, not a private conversation lived in the shadow of his charm. Justice needed a stage, and the stage had already been rented and decorated and paid for in full. I started a new folder on my laptop and named it Vows. 2 days later, in a ballroom trimmed with eucalyptus and gold, surrounded by people who thought they knew us, I would press play. But that's not the cliffhanger. This is the night before the wedding, the rehearsal dinner ending with late toasts and early tears. I watched my brother and my best friend disappear, together, down a back hallway, and I followed. There's a particular kind of quiet in event venues after midnight. its own weather. The air goes cool and stale, carrying a cocktail of scents. Floor cleaner, old coffee, perfume ghosts, the metallic ozone of extension cords that have been warming all day. I slipped out of the main room, away from clinking glasses and rehearsed laughter, and padded into the dim corridor. My shoes made no sound on the carpet. The lights hummed, a bug chorus. I wasn't planning to be a hero. I was planning to be a recorder. Down the hall, a door clicked. A shadow moved behind frosted glass. Carla's outline, unmistakable. Tim's, taller, broader, blurred into her. They didn't see me. They wouldn't. People in the middle of doing the wrong thing don't look for witnesses. They assume the world is a mirror reflecting their best angle. I stepped into a side room, one of those generic conference spaces with chairs stacked like Tetris pieces. I pulled out my phone and hit the voice memo app, then the camera. The red light felt obscene in the dark, so I covered it with my thumb. I lifted the phone to my ear like I was on a call, the way you do in public when you're pretending not to be alone. The door opened again. Tim's laugh, Carla's whisper. 5 minutes. Just 5. Tim said, "You always say 5. Someone bumped the wall." My blood thudded at my temples so loud I was sure they could hear it. That the building was wired to my heartbeat. I aimed my phone through the crack. The audio would be enough. "It had to be, last time," Carla said. "I mean it." Her voice trembled. She sounded like she was arguing with herself. "I'm marrying her tomorrow," Tim whispered. "So, last time." It's astonishing how quickly words can scrub away doubt. People will try to talk you out of your own memory. They'll propose better stories that make them the hero, but you can't narrate away a timestamp. They kissed. It was frantic, not tender. The kind of urgency that isn't love but appetite. I stepped back, something sharp pressing into my shoulder. One of the stacked chair legs. It squeaked. The corridor went still. "Hello?" Tim called. I held my breath until black flowers popped at the edges of my vision. Footsteps. Closer. Closer. The conference room door handle turned. I flattened behind the chairs, the air tight as plastic wrap. The door cracked, light slicing in, painting the carpet in a line. Tim poked his head in. I could smell his cologne, cedar and something sweet. He scanned the room. He didn't see me. He never really did. Probably the AC. He muttered to himself, and closed the door. My lungs kicked back on. Tears pricked my eyes. Stupid, involuntary. Not sadness. Just the body's way of releasing pressure so the machine doesn't break. When I walked back into the main hall, my mother's eyes latched onto me like anchors. "Where have you been?" she demanded, like I was a teenager who'd slipped out after curfew. "In the hallway," I said. She scanned my face. Mothers always keep your baby picture taped to their retinas. They compare it to the latest update, measure the distance. "You look pale," she said. "Maybe I'm allergic to eucalyptus," I said, and kissed her forehead. Her skin smelled like powder and something lemony. She softened, because motherhood is a series of softening events with occasional hard edges. On my way to the bar, I almost collided with Emily. "Hey," she said, and the single syllable was a hug. "You good?" Her hair was up in a loose bun, and a piece of it had fallen to kiss her temple. She was glowing in that way brides do right before the clock strikes change. She was kind. She was kind all the way through, which is rarer than beauty, I considered telling her. "Right then. Just pulling the pin. Step outside with me. I have something to show you. I'm sorry. I love you like family, and I'm sorry." Instead, I said, "You picked the right cake. The lemon was too try-hard," she laughed. "Thank God." For a minute, I thought I'd chosen the wrong frosting and doomed the marriage. I choked on air. She touched my elbow, concerned. "Mark? Just emotion," I said, and she smiled. "If you're judging me, I understand. If you think I should have told her immediately, you may be right. But I also knew Tim, and I knew in this family, truth delivered in private could be paved over in public. I needed the room. I needed the room to hear it, so the room could hold it. Sleep was an animal I chased but never cornered that night. At 2:13 a.m., the old clock in my childhood bedroom ticked like it had an agenda. At 3:47, I counted breaths to stave off the urge to drive to the venue and set the whole place on fire, figuratively, legally. At 4:22, I texted myself a list of tasks for the morning. Backup audio. Backup the backup. Copy files to slides. Final. Coordinate with DJ re-timing. Remotely cue from podium. Test. Hide second USB. Car trunk. At dawn, I showered so hot my skin flushed. The mirror steamed and unsteamed, and there I was. A stranger I still had to be. That morning, coordination became choreography. I arrived at the venue early with coffee and a box of kolaches and an attitude that said, "I'm the brother of the groom, and today I'm logistics." People trust men who carry clipboards. I carried two. The DJ was a guy named Troy with a high fade and a careful smile. He was the type who'd spent a lot of time making other people's big days sound the way they remembered happiness. He was about my age, maybe a year younger. I stood by his table while he sorted cables like he was knitting. "Hey man," I said, and handed him coffee. He lit up like a plant under a grow light. "You're a saint," he said. "Everyone says they're gonna get me coffee. No one actually gets me coffee." "Yeah. Well," I said, "today's special." I showed him the official slideshow. Photos of Emily and Tim from babies to awkward braces to present-day posed laughter. I suggested we test it on the big projector now to avoid glitches later. He nodded like I'd said a magic word. And then I took a breath, dropped my voice half a level, and said the kind of sentence that requires a leap of faith. "There's a second segment at the end. Surprise for the bride? When I give you the signal, it autoplays. I'll cue you from the podium." He looked wary but willing. "As long as it's not a rickroll," he joked. "Nah," I said. "Worse. We tested the remote clicker. Left, right, pause, play." My thumb learned the notches in the plastic like Braille. I slipped the USB with the real payload into the back of the laptop, set the playlist to autoplay, and labeled it the most boring thing I could think of: Ceremony Backup V2. Then I did something I'm not proud of, but I'm not ashamed of either. I texted an anonymous tip to Emily's maid of honor, a woman named Jess, who had known Emily since they were 9 and had matching ankle scars from falling off bikes together. The text was sharp and plain. "If there is a moment today when you need to stand between the bride and the world, be ready." Her reply was a single dot, then always. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. It hit the carpet, bounced once, and landed screen up, showing me a selfie of me and Carla from a year ago. Laughing, sun-drunk, ridiculous, a relic from a universe that had dissolved. At 11 a.m., people began to arrive in waves smelling like cologne and hope. My father wore a suit that felt too big for him, like it had to contain feelings he didn't have the vocabulary for. He shook my hand and squeezed, a man's way of saying he loved me without opening his mouth. Mom floated around like a human champagne bubble. "Corsages go here and, oh, Mark, take a picture of me with the sign." The sign is adorable. The sign said, "Welcome to the beginning." I nearly laughed. Tim spent the morning being congratulated. Emily spent the morning making everyone else feel like the party was for them. I kept my eyes on the clock like it owed me money. At 1:58 p.m., we lined up. At 2 the music started, strings, gentle and bright. The room shifted in that way rooms do when 1,000 eyes agree to look in the same direction. I took my place near the podium. My heart was a trapped bird. I covered the microphone and coughed to test the sound. The speakers popped faintly, alive, ready. The officiant, a woman with a calm presence and a voice like a good audiobook, began the ceremony with the usual poetry. "Love is patient, love is kind." I'd always felt those words were a dare. I wondered what kind of love needed to be told to be kind. Tim's eyes drifted toward the back as she spoke. He was scanning for Carla. I almost smiled. Guilty men are always auditing the room for their accomplices. When he found her, a few rows back on the groom's side, their eyes touched like fingers. She looked down, then up, then away. I watched the guilt flicker across her face like a passing cloud. I hoped it would rain. Emily looked at him like he was her favorite book. The officiant did the reading Emily had chosen. Adrian Rich, about a marriage that was a conversation. I thought, okay, let's talk. The moment arrived. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined, tradition asks for objections. Nobody ever expects one. It's a ceremonial dare, a remnant from a time when truth had to push through people's throats in public. My mouth went dry. The remote clicker in my hand felt heavy as a gavel. I stepped forward. "Actually," I said, "a collective intake of breath is a weather event." The room's air pressure shifted. People pivoted toward me like sunflowers. Tim's jaw locked. "Mark," he hissed, makeless but audible. "Don't." Emily's fingers tightened on her bouquet. "What's happening?" I swallowed. My throat clicked. "I'm sorry," I said to her. "I'm so sorry, but I can't let you say yes without seeing something." "Mark," my mother said, voice pitched high. "What are you doing?" "Saving her," I said. I turned to Troy. He met my eyes. I gave him the nod. He hesitated, just a flicker. But then his hand moved. Play. The first seconds of the slideshow unfolded normally. Baby Tim in a bath, baby Emily in a Halloween pumpkin onesie. Laughter, cooing, nostalgia doing its job. And then, click, the screen flickered. The music dropped to a low hum. The images changed, the palette cooling, a text thread appeared. White bubbles, green bubbles, time-stamped. The words were simple enough. You're late. Traffic. I'm in the mirror. Laughter in the room stumbled and fell. Then the audio clip played, muffled but clear enough. Carla's whisper, Tim's voice, the timestamp. Another clip. Another. Silence expanded until you could feel the edges of it pressing against the walls. Those nearest the screen leaned forward, like gravity itself had shifted. Emily's face went still the way faces do before they break. Her lips parted, no sound. Not yet. Tim lunged toward the DJ table. My father, God bless him, surprised me, stepped into his path and put a hand on his chest. Son, he said, voice steady. Don't! Carla stood up halfway, then sat down, then stood up again in a panic half-dance. The final image froze. A photo of Tim's hand in Carla's hair, reflected in that stupid green-gray mirror. The room didn't make a sound. Then it made all the sounds at once. Emily dropped her bouquet. It hit with a soft thud that felt like tragedy amplified. Jess, maid of honor, was at Emily's side in a heartbeat, arms around her shoulders, a human brace. Someone in the back said, Jesus, under their breath. Mom made a small animal noise and pressed her fingers to her mouth. Tim looked at me with something I'd never seen on his face before. Not anger. Not even fear. It was nakedness. He had no story ready. For once in his life, he was out of magazine pages to flip to. Mark, he said, and this time it was a plea. Please. I kept my eyes on Emily. I didn't tell you privately, I said, voice shaking but audible. Because I knew he'd make you doubt what you know to be true. This is the truth. You deserve to make a decision with all the information. Her eyes lifted to me. They were not grateful. They were not angry. They were something deeper. How long? She asked. Months, I said. She nodded once, like a judge noting news for the record. Turn it off. Mom cried, suddenly furious. Turn it off, turn it off. She grabbed at me, nails digging crescents into my wrist. This is not how families handle things. It's how we should have handled things a long time ago, Dad said quietly. His eyes were on Tim, and they were wet. You did this. The officiant stood, hands folded in front of her, a lighthouse in a storm. We're going to take a moment, she said. And somehow her voice wrapped around the room, soothed it, didn't fix anything but made it possible to breathe again. Emily straightened, wiped her cheek with the back of her hand like a boxer readying for another round, and turned to Tim. Did you sleep with Carla? She asked, each word distinct as marble. He swallowed, nodded. It didn't mean, stop, she said. And he did. You don't get to narrate this. She turned to Carla. My best friend looked like she'd forgotten how to be a person. I'm sorry, Carla whispered uselessly. Emily's mouth moved as if to say something else. She didn't. She just turned and walked out. The crowd parted like she was a tide. Jess went with her, arm around her, glancing back only once to burn the room with her eyes. Tim took a step after them. I blocked him without looking intimidating. Just there, a wall built of all the times I'd let him through before. Don't, I said. He stared at me, and for a second, it was 20 years of brotherhood distilled into one look. Love and competition and 1,000 games and me always catching him. I didn't catch him this time. He shoved past me anyway. I stumbled, regained my footing, and raised the mic. The bar is open, I said. Because dark humor is a life preserver sometimes, and also because people needed direction. Laughter cracked, a few short, shocked barks. Then the room broke. Clusters forming, murmurs rising, phones out. The organism of a wedding reorganizing itself around a wound. Behind me, the projector screen glowed, frozen on a truth that didn't care who saw it. I took a breath like a man surfacing, tasted metal in my mouth and turned to find Carla standing 3 feet away, her eyes salt bright, hands shaking. Why, Mark? She asked. Why like this? The answer was easy. It had just taken me months to earn it. So it couldn't be rewritten, I said. Her face crumpled. You've ruined my life. No, I said softly. You did. Her shoulders sank. Something in me wanted to hold her. I didn't. The room shuddered again as a door at the back banged open. Jess barreled in alone, hair wild, eyes locked on me. She wants to talk to you, she said, voice sharp with purpose. Now. I nodded, handed the mic to the officiant like it was an heirloom, and followed Jess through the parted sea of people and out into the bright corridor. My pulse pounded. My hands were so cold my knuckles ached. The hallway smelled like industrial soap. Emily stood near the exit, composure stitched hastily over grief. Her makeup perfect except for a constellation of mascara dots under her eyes. She looked up at me. Thank you, she said. And I said, I'm sorry. She nodded. Take me home. Behind us, the ballroom erupted. Half outrage, half awe. I didn't look back. Jess led me to the curb where the Texas afternoon cut like new glass. Emily was standing under a thin strip of shade from the porte cochere, hands twisting the little satin ribbon around her bouquet stems until the ribbon snapped. She didn't seem to notice. A breeze lifted the veil and set it flying like a white flag that refused to surrender. Take me home, she said again, slower, calmer, like the words had to pass through a checkpoint first. I nodded, opened the passenger door, and stood there until she was belted in. Her perfume, orange blossom and clean linen, filled the car. I drove the back way to avoid guests and the photographers who smelled a story. We didn't speak. The GPS wanted to take us onto I-35. I ignored it and cut through side streets I'd memorized as a teen. At a red light, I watched the crosswalk numbers count down and felt a sick gratitude for numbers. How they always told the truth. We reached her apartment. I killed the engine and the sudden quiet roared. Come up? She asked. I followed her up the stairs. Inside, the air was cool and calm, an altar of ordinary, a plant leaning toward the window, a blanket folded imperfectly on the couch, a row of library books like prayer beads. She took off her shoes and lined them up beside the mat. Then she turned to me and finally cried. No sobs, no screams, just clean, steady tears. When she looked back up, something in her face had set like plaster. Not hardness, structure. Show me everything, she said. I did. I airdropped the folder vows to her laptop, opened the timeline I'd built like a bad novel, and let her scroll at her own pace. She flinched once. She swiped back. She stared at a timestamp as if time itself had done this to her. How long have you known? She asked without looking up. 48 hours, I said. I double-checked before I believed my own eyes. You were going to tell me privately? I know I wasn't, and you can hate me for that. I forced myself to hold her gaze. He's good at turning truth into a misunderstanding. I didn't want you gaslit before the vows. I wanted witnesses. I wanted you free, she breathed out slow. I don't hate you. Silence settled between us like something living. A car honked somewhere. An upstairs neighbor turned on a blender. Life had the nerve to continue. Thank you, she said. Can I do anything else? I asked, the question too small for the room. Yes, she said. Please tell my parents I'm safe. And if anyone tries to get to me through you, shut it down. She softened. I know that's asking a lot with your family. My family, I repeated, tasting the word. I can handle my family. On the kitchen table, her phone buzzed with the fury of a hornet nest. She flipped it face down. I'm going to call my boss. And a locksmith. And Jess. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand, then squared her shoulders. And then I'm going to sleep. Do you want me to stay? She shook her head. I want you to go face him before he decides what this story is. I nodded and left, my own phone vibrating with the kind of energy that eats battery and patience. On the stairs, I finally looked. Mom, 12 missed calls. Tim, 14, Dad, 3, Carla, 7. Jess, 1. She's okay. Unknown numbers, a creeping chorus. I didn't answer any of them yet. I needed a minute of my own breath. In the car, I sat with my forehead on the steering wheel and let the world condense into heat and the smell of the vinyl dashboard. A memory unspooled, uninvited. Me at 12, Tim at 15, him convincing me to switch the price tags on 2 pairs of sneakers at the outlet because corporations don't feel pain. Me doing it, us getting caught, him stepping back, palms up, innocent, while I stammered apologies and Mom's disappointment poured over me like cold soup. The first time I realized that truth evaporates around him unless you freeze it solid. That was the turning point. Not the text thread, not the FaceTime, not even the shadow behind the frosted glass. The turning point was realizing I could either keep translating his actions into softer language, or I could engrave what was real. 2 days earlier, when I'd closed his laptop with the breathless certainty of a man who's just read his own autopsy, I'd opened a new page in my head called Purpose. I became a librarian of proof. I screenshotted everything with the zeal of a meticulous clerk. I exported message threads to PDFs because screenshots can be argued with, but PDFs feel like documents. I copied XF data like it was sacred. I backed up to a hard drive, then to a cloud folder with an innocuous name, then to an encrypted thumb drive I labeled with a Sharpie, car maintenance. I set the files to read only. I wrote a timeline on paper in my ugliest handwriting, date, time, content, so there was a physical record if tech failed me. I called a lawyer friend, not for drama, just for 30 seconds of sanity. As long as you're not breaking a law to obtain it, truth is truth. But don't weaponize anything illegally. I didn't. I wouldn't. I rehearsed the moment in the ballroom in my head and then in my living room, standing on a chair, holding a TV remote like a mic. I practiced speaking to Emily, not to him. I stripped my language of fire so it wouldn't burn her. I cut anything that sounded like I wanted to be applauded. I practiced the silence after the word, actually. Then I engineered the fail-safes because sabotage runs in our family. I made 2 folders with almost identical names. One for the sentimental slideshow, one for the truth. I baked the proof into the end of the sentimental video with a silent transition only I knew to cue. I tested the projector 3 times. I learned where the surge strip lived. I learned the DJ's name like a prayer. I taped the backup USB inside the lining of my suit jacket pocket. I put another in my glove compartment. I texted a copy of the folder to Jess with a single line. Open only if I'm not in the room. She replied with a lock emoji. The night before, near midnight, there had been a close call that almost blew everything. Mom, drunk on nostalgia and Prosecco, had drifted up to me near the DJ table and said, "Let me see what you made for the video, sweetheart." I'd held the laptop at an angle that showed only baby pictures and montage fonts. "Surprise," I'd said. She'd kissed my cheek and floated away, unaware of the tripwire she'd just missed with her heel. Another close call. At 12:40 a.m., the venue manager had come by to tell Troy the projector had been flickering earlier in the week, and they'd replaced the bulb. "Just flag me if it acts up," she'd said. I'd smiled politely and then gone to my car and screamed into a towel. The plan relied on 1,000 small mechanics working in sequence. It also relied on people being exactly who they'd always been. Tim charming, Mom controlling, Dad quiet until it mattered, me the fixer, Emily kind. The only variable I wasn't sure of was me. If I'd have the nerve to say actually into a microphone with my mother watching. I had. I did. It worked. Now the plan had moved from choreography to aftermath, the part no spreadsheet can predict. I drove to my parents' house because my body knew the route before my mind could argue. Mom was on the porch pacing, phone in her hand like a weapon she wasn't allowed to discharge. When she saw me, her mouth tightened into a bowstring. "How could you?" she hissed before I was even on the steps. "How could you humiliate your brother like that?" Dad stepped into the doorway behind her and spoke my name like a blessing. "Mark, where is he?" I asked. "In his room," Mom said, pointing with 2 fingers like I was a waitress she was ready to reprimand. "Do not make it worse," I passed her. She grabbed my sleeve. "This family handles things privately." "This family," I said softly, "has been handling things privately for a long time. Look where it got us." Her hand fell away. She looked almost small. It scared me how quickly my anger softened toward her. Habit is a narcotic. I knocked on Tim's door and didn't wait. He was sitting on the edge of his old bed in a white undershirt and tuxedo pants. Jacket puddled on the floor like a shedskin. His tie hung in his hands, tangled, a metaphor even he might understand. He looked up at me with that combination of injured pride and boyish hope he'd always used to cross bridges he'd blown up himself. "You ruined my wedding," he said, voice hoarse. "You ruined your wedding," I said, and closed the door behind me. "You didn't have to do it like that. I had to do it in a way you couldn't narrate away. You've always been more convincing than you are truthful." He flinched, then tried a different angle. "You embarrassed Mom. You humiliated Emily." "Emily walked out with her head up," I said. "You humiliated yourself." "And Carla," his jaw flexed. "Carla doesn't—" "Stop," I said, not loud, just level. "You don't get to add footnotes." For the first time, his face crumpled in an unscripted way. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," he said. "I swear. I kept thinking I'd stop." I sat in Dad's old desk chair and let the wooden back dig into my shoulder blades. The difference between thinking you'll stop and stopping is action. You're in love with momentum. You mistake it for change. He stared at the floor. "Do you feel good?" he asked finally, glancing up with a spiteful smile. "Do you feel righteous? The hero?" "No," I said. "I feel like someone who finally put a brick in front of a rolling car. You were headed toward a cliff with passengers. I couldn't watch." A long minute passed. The old clock down the hall ticked. The silence between us filled with the sound of who we'd been and who we'd maybe never be. He said quietly, "I hate you." I nodded. "I can live with that." He stood like a man put on a stage he didn't choose, squared his shoulders, and tried on a sentence like a suit. "I'm going to talk to Emily." "She asked for space," I said. "She's my fiancée. She's her own person." He laughed once, sharp. "You really think you're the authority on relationships now?" "No," I said. "But I'm the authority on what you do to people you love when no one stops you." He shouldered past me. I let him, because blocking him is a story that ends with us both bleeding. Down the hall, he collided with Dad. They stood eye to eye for a second that stretched. "Son," Dad said. "Not now." His voice had steel in it I'd never found there before. Tim dropped his gaze first. I left before Mom could force us into a living room summit that would end with me apologizing to keep the peace. In the driveway, I leaned against my car and finally texted back, "Jess, she's safe. Thank you." Before I could pocket my phone, a rideshare rolled to a stop at the curb like a summoned ghost. Carla stepped out. She looked wrecked in that too perfect way beautiful people do when they're trying not to. Sunglasses, hoodie, hair twisted into a punishing bun. When she saw me, she took them off, as if it would help. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Not here," I said, glancing back at the house. "Not now. Please, Mark." Her voice cracked on my name. We walked to the end of the block where the pavement buckled around the roots of an old oak. The cicadas were so loud it felt like the air was vibrating. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, hands open, the pose of someone who finally understands that there may be nothing left to hold. "I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I told myself it was temporary. She swallowed. "I loved you. Not like that. But I loved you. I don't know how I let it become this." "You didn't let it become anything," I said. "You chose." She nodded, tears spilling over that she didn't bother to swipe away. "Say you hate me." "I don't," I said, and it was the truth I didn't expect to find. "I don't hate you. I'm done with you." She winced like I'd slapped her. "That's worse." "It's final," I said. "You'll be okay. You know how to make new cities out of ruins, but you can't take anything from my city anymore." We stood there until the cicadas shifted to a new rhythm and a dog barked, and the world continued to insist on existing. She put her sunglasses back on. "Bye, Hinge," she said, voice small. "The door's closed," I said. She nodded and left. As I watched her ride pull away, Mom texted, "Family dinner, now." I turned the screen off. My phone chimed again, a different tone, a number I didn't know. "Hi, this is Sarah from the venue. We're so sorry for how things unfolded. We can refund half the deposit due to extenuating circumstances. Please have Emily contact us directly." I forwarded it, expecting nothing, and got a heart reaction back from Emily 30 seconds later. It felt like an oxygen mask dropping from the ceiling. I drove home and collapsed face down on the couch. When I woke up, evening had varnished the room gold. My phone was a graveyard of messages. I didn't listen. I made a grilled cheese, burned it, ate it anyway. I washed the pan. I stared at the folder vows and didn't open it. That was the plan completed. But revenge is never just the reveal. It's the fallout. It's who you are in the echo. At 9:11 p.m., my door shook like weather. I opened it to find Tim on the porch, hair wild, eyes rimmed red. "You told Emily where she lives?" he said, already angry at the wrong thing. "She asked me to take her home," I said. "I want her back." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so my living room wouldn't learn these words. "No," I said simply. "You don't get to decide," he said, chest swelling, the performance warming up. "Correct," I said. "She does." And she said no. He smiled. Ugly, broken. "You think you're clean in this, Mr. Virtue? You planned this. You engineered it. You wanted the applause." "I didn't want applause," I said. "I wanted the truth to have an audience." For a second I thought he might swing. He didn't. He laughed once like he'd cracked a tooth. Then he left, peeling away from the curb as if velocity could outrun consequence. I stood there a long time with the porch light turning moths into tiny comets and thought, I can sleep now. That thought scared me, so I didn't sleep. Not yet. I wrote down 3 rules on an index card and taped it to my fridge. Don't argue with liars in private. Don't carry other people's shame up your stairs. Don't rewrite what you saw to make love easier. I poured a glass of water. I stood at the sink. I breathed. Then, finally, I slept. It wasn't actually a dinner. It was a tribunal with coleslaw. Mom had set the table like a truce. Candles, her nice runner, napkin rings shaped like little gold leaves. But the air was courtroom. Dad's face was tired in a new way. Tim was already at the table, turning a fork over and over like it could explain something the right way up. I set my keys on the counter like a gavel and sat. Mom didn't waste time. "Your aunt saw the video," she started, voice tight. "And now she's telling everyone at church that our family is dysfunctional." "Our family is dysfunctional," I said gently. "Not like that," she snapped, then closed her eyes, guilt crossing her features like a cloud. "I'm sorry. This is not how I raised you." "You raised us to protect appearances," I said. and then immediately wished I hadn't. Because the truth, when it lands, doesn't care where it falls. Dad put a hand on Mom's wrist. She stilled. He looked at me. I should have said more sooner, he said. To both of you. I've let your mother take hits she didn't deserve, and I've let you… He looked at Tim. Tell yourself you'd fix it later while people got hurt now. He swallowed. That's on me. The room shifted. Kitchens are where families fight, because they are also where families heal. The tile was cool under my feet, anchoring me. Tim sniffed, uselessly trying to appear collected. What do you want from me? He asked the room, but mostly me. Nothing, I said. Genuinely. This isn't a ransom note. I want boundaries. Meaning? He was defiant, but a child lives inside every defiant man. Meaning, I'm not going to cover for you, I said. I'm not going to handle things that you break. I'm not going to attend events where you bring your latest story and expect applause. If you want me in your life, you enter my life, honestly. And if I don't? He asked. Then we're done, I said. The word again. Final, but not vindictive. And I'll survive that. Mom's eyes filled. He's your brother. I know exactly who he is, I said. I'm choosing who I am. Mom looked away, maybe to keep from seeing the small, quiet satisfaction in my posture. She whispered, I just wanted my boys to love each other. I reached across and took her hand, warm, shaking. I love him, I said. I just won't help him lie. We ate in a strange simulacrum of normalcy after that. Potato salad like a peace offering. Chicken too dry to be a metaphor. After, I helped Mom do dishes because love refuses to be tidy. As we scrubbed, she said, not looking at me. I didn't know how to make him stop. I didn't want to see it. If I ignored it, maybe it would become untrue. That's not how truth works, I said, rinsing a plate until it squeaked. She nodded. I know that now. In the weeks that followed, the story sprouted legs and ran. I didn't plant it, but I watched it sprint past me with a mix of relief and nausea. Friends texted versions of the same question. Is it true? I replied with the same answer. Yes. No commentary. No victory lap. Emily disappeared from our social rings, which felt like someone had turned off a lamp. Then, slowly, her light reappeared where she'd taken it. Photos of hikes in a different part of the city, a new haircut, a cascade of supportive comments from women who wrote, I would have wanted to know too. Jess kept me updated only when necessary. She's with her folks for a bit. She got the venue refund. She returned the gifts unopened. She's sleeping again. I admired her as a person who chose dignity in a moment that would have justified chaos. Carla sent a letter, on paper, in her messy left-slanted handwriting. It was 5 pages long and read like a person on a cliff describing the view and the drop at once. She said there was no excuse. She said she thought she could handle the compartments she'd built in her life. She said she'd started therapy, not as an apology but as a tool. She said she would not reach out again unless I reached out first. She included the key to a storage unit where I'd once kept some boxes of old books and forgotten sweaters we never quite divided after college. Practical mercy. I folded the letter into its envelope and slid it into a drawer. I left it there like a pressed leaf. I didn't write back. Tim did what Tim does. He tried 3 different stories in 3 different rooms. In one, he was a man who had made a mistake and sought forgiveness. In another, he was a victim of a predatory friend. In a third, he was a martyr of modern relationship complexity. Those stories lasted a week each. Then the video existed again, and the stories burned up like moths. He lost some friends and kept others. He learned which men liked him for his charisma, and which loved him enough to tell him the truth. He started going to meetings. What kind doesn't matter. He texted me once, a simple, I'm trying. I wrote back, good, not proud of you. Not call me when you want to talk. Just good. Mom oscillated between defensiveness and humility, like a pendulum learning a new rhythm. Dad started saying no more and less. The 4 of us performed a clumsy dance of reassembly with a gap in the middle where Emily should have been, and wasn't. One Saturday, months later, I ran into Emily at the farmer's market. The morning was soft and blue, and everyone was buying peaches like they were currency. She looked fine, better than fine. She looked like someone who had slept. Hey, she said. Surprised but not shaken. Hey, I said, equally surprised, equally not shaken. We stood beside the honey stand, watching a bee commit to a decision. I cleared my throat. How are you? Good, she said, and it sounded real. Working too much. I'm thinking of moving. Far? Not far, just elsewhere, she smiled. Sometimes you have to take your furniture and tell a new set of walls who you are. Yeah, I said. I'm trying that with my brain. She laughed. It was a small sound, but it found the frequency of the morning and matched it. She touched my forearm, just 2 fingers, light, human. "I'm glad you pressed play," she said. "It hurt like hell." And I'm glad. I didn't realize I was bracing for absolution until my spine relaxed. "Thank you," I said, "for not hating me." "I tried," she said. "It didn't take." Then, "Bye, Mark. Bye, Emily." I bought peaches like they were a new religion. Not every reaction was tidy. A cousin called me a drama queen on Facebook without names but with enough context to sting. I didn't reply because that platform is a swamp and I like my ankles unsucked. An uncle clapped me on the back at a barbecue and said, "Took guts," in a tone that suggested he'd have done something more violent and less effective. A neighbor I barely knew left a note on my windshield. "My sister married a Tim. I wish someone had done what you did." That one I kept. I stuck it on my fridge beside the index card with my 3 rules. It turned the kitchen into a small museum of the moment I chose not to be quiet. And the last piece, me and sleep. For months, I'd been living on 3 hours and adrenaline, my dreams populated by frozen projector screens and microphones that didn't turn on. Now, slowly, I went to bed and woke up like a person, not a security guard. I stopped checking locks twice. I didn't delete the vows folder. I moved it to an external drive labeled taxes and put it on a shelf. Truth, archived, not weaponized. One evening near winter, Tim knocked on my door. He looked different in a way people do when they've been held up to a mirror for too long. Smaller, realer. "I'm not here to be forgiven," he said before I could say anything. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for making you do that. You shouldn't have had to be the one." I considered the sentence, turned it over like a fork. "Thank you," I said. He shifted. "And I'm going to be gone for a while. A program. No phones." "Okay," I said. "I hope you do the work." He nodded. He turned to go and then turned back. "You've always been the one who cleans up," he said. "I get that now. I don't want you to have to clean up after me anymore." "Good," I said. "I don't want to either." After he left, I sat in the dim living room with the lamp making a circle of gold on the rug and realized the house didn't feel like a waiting room anymore. It felt like mine. Weeks later, at a small family gathering, no aunts, no church friends, just the core 4 and a lasagna that could sedate a horse. Mom poured wine and, without prompting, said to the room, "I realize I've been asking the wrong questions." I asked, "Why would he do this to us?" when I should have asked, "Why did he do this to her?" She looked at me. "I'm sorry, Mark, for making you feel like silence was kindness." I touched the stem of my glass. "Thank you," I said. "We can do different now. We can. We did. Not perfectly, but on purpose." The revenge wasn't the slideshow. The revenge was refusing the family script that would have let the slideshow be rewritten by the next holiday. The revenge was truth with witnesses, and then boundaries that protected that truth from erosion. The revenge was pressing stop on the part of me that kept saving Tim from himself. And the sweetest part, which is to say the part that tasted least like blood, was this. Months later, I pressed play on my own life and found new scenes. I joined a pickup soccer league. I learned to make a decent risotto. I started dating someone who asked good questions and listened to the answers. I told her the story on our 4th date and watched her face for flinches. "There weren't any," she said. "Sounds like you grew a backbone and put your heart against it." I said, "I stole that line," and she laughed. Sometimes I think about that exact moment at the altar. The breath before actually, the weight of the clicker, the projector rectifying light into evidence, and I don't feel the rush anymore. I feel something steadier. Relief. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Justice isn't always a gavel. Sometimes it's a slideshow, a microphone, and a man deciding he won't be quiet for a brother who never learned the difference between charisma and character. If you've ever watched a loved one walk toward a decision you know will crush them, you know the particular helplessness that sits behind your ribs like a fist. You bargain with yourself. You redefine words. You tell yourself that silence is mercy. I told myself all of that. And then, in a hotel ballroom strung with eucalyptus and expectation, I decided that the kindest thing I could do was be cruel to the lie. Pressing play wasn't vengeance for me. It was consent for Emily. It was giving her what she needed to say no to a future she hadn't agreed to. It was also a line in the sand for my family. We don't protect image over people anymore. We don't let charm eat consequence. We don't make the quiet one hold the bag because he's good at it. What comes after a public truth isn't neat. Some people will resent you for years because you ruined a good story. Some will thank you in whispers because you saved them from living a bad one. But here's what I know. I sleep. Emily laughs again. Tim is learning the kind of humility that is earned, not performed. And I am done being the hinge on a door that only ever swung one way. If you're standing at your own podium, clicker in hand, heart pounding, wondering if you're about to become the villain in someone else's version of events. Remember this: villains hate documentation, truth doesn't. I'm Mark, 28, Austin. If you felt that knot in your stomach loosen when the truth landed, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. Tell me, would you have told her privately, or would you have pressed play? I read every story you share. On this channel, we don't chase drama. We reclaim power, one honest choice at a time.